This is Pop Culture Confidential, and I'm Christina Yerling Biru. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This week, I got to sit down with Joachim Trier, acclaimed Norwegian director and someone whose work I never miss. His new film, Sentimental Value, is taking audiences by storm. Sentimental Value is Trier's sixth film, following the huge success of The Worst Person in the World, and once again, he teams up with the brilliant Renate Reinsve. It's already taken home the Grand Prix at Cannes, wowed audiences at Telluride, Toronto, and San Sebastian, and will continue its festival run in New York and London, all while serious Oscar buzz builds around it. The film follows Nora and Agnes, played beautifully by Reinsve and Inga Ibsdotter Lilleaas. After the death of their mother, they reunite with their estranged father Gustav, a once renowned director played to perfection by Stellan Skarsgård. Gustav offers stage actress Nora a role in what he hopes will be his big comeback film. When she turns it down, he gives the part to Hollywood star Rachel Kemp, played by Elle Fanning. It's been quite a year for Trier, so much so that Charlie XCX and others have dubbed it a Joachim Trier summer. And judging by the reception for the film, we might just be heading into a full-on Joachim Trier fall, winter, and award season. I was so happy to dive into some of the film's most beautiful themes, including the roles we play in our families, the complexity of our relationships, and a few themes that clearly come from a very personal place. So here's my conversation with Joachim Trier, recorded just ahead of the film's premiere in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm so honored and privileged to get to follow your film, and I was just thinking the other day that I've spent more time in exotic places with you and your Sentimental Value family than I have with my own this year.
Really? Well,
I've seen you in France and in Telluride, and now a couple of events in Stockholm, and I'm equally astounded at how much this film means to me and to everyone that I see it with. So it's remarkable, and I want to thank you for that. I want to start by asking, in the 6 films that you've made so far, I feel like it's kind of a journey you're taking into human behavior, and in ways it's mirroring your own life. I was wondering, where were you when you started with Eskil Voigt writing Sentimental Value?
that's a good question. I think all the films come out of a self-imposed crisis. Maybe sometimes it's an actual crisis, some crisis of confidence or a life stage that's changing, and it triggers the realization that ordinary life is actually, if you look under the surface, full of dramatic events, and that we are curious generally to your questions also regarding other films we've made. So we life stages, transitions are hard. Growth is hard, relationships are hard, dealing with yourself is sometimes much more complicated than it seems. So for Sentimental Value, I think actually the success of The Worst Person in the World blowing up beyond what we expected and traveling around the world and getting Oscar nominations and all this stuff, which we were, of course, terribly grateful for, very, very happy about. It left us in a moment of crisis, like, what are we doing now? What is this, like we've done 5 films until this point, what and how I had, I had children, Eskil had children a bit earlier than me, but we're working a lot. What does it all mean? And kind of feeling that we will probably, we said to ourselves, disappoint everyone now anyway, because they're not going to like it as much as Worst Person in the World. So we're kind of off the hook. That was the crisis. Like, say, fuck it. Let's do what we want to do, as we've always done. Do something intimate. Do something close to the skin of the characters. And this thing came up. We started with 2 sisters, reconciling how different their narrative and understanding of the same family is in the story. And then slowly a father arrived, and a complicated father, and we were like, oh no, we can't make him just an asshole, and that's such a cliche, and how do we make him 3-dimensional? How do we tell his story? And then we realized, hey, Stellan Skarsgård. Mm-hmm. I could write it for him. What if he would say yes? I didn't know him. So I went and met him, and we knew we had Renate already. We wrote Nora, the character Nora, for her. So suddenly we also had these actors, and that inspired me, to stretch. And Stellan challenged me and said, don't make Gustav nice, but make him real, make him complex, and I'll play him. So we tried that our best.
Because you come from 3 generations of filmmakers in your family. You're the third. Stellan, of course, is from a creative family. Every family has issues and sores and things, but there's something specific about coming from a family of creatives, right?
Of course. No, I come from, on my father's side, they were my great-grandfather and my grandfather were painters, and my father did sound and was also a musician, sound for movies. And my grandfather on my mother's side was a film director, Erik Löken, who went to Cannes in 1960 with his wonderful film, The Hunt, but didn't feel so successful all over because there was no infrastructure to sustain his filmmaking in Norway at the time. And my mom did documentaries and some fiction, and so I know that world. And I of course, when people are ambitious and they do something of an artistic nature, you don't come home from work quite. You bring it with you. So it brings the life-work balance, as they say in America, is askew. There's something it doesn't separate quite, like in some other families. It's when people have a sort of a drive for some personal expression, that has some side effects. That even when you're present, there's a danger you're not quite present because you're thinking about what you're doing or the project is still living in your mind. So that's something to be cautious of course. But the positive side that I'm at the same time trying to show in the film is that artistic people are yearning for a language outside of the social verbal language that we all share, talking together. We're all yearning for music or literature or painting or cinema or theater to express something which seems inexpressible in our social life. So I'm trying to show both sides of that. But I have to say that I'm a little bit shamed, again, about making a film about artistic people as if I'm idealizing them. So it was very important to me and my team that we use this theme of the artistic family as a key to open something, to enlighten a unanimous experience that we can all have about family and this communication. That if you go to see this movie, you don't need to know anything about movie making or theater or have anything to do with it, but hopefully that through these specific characters, we can show a story of some sense of depth about how hard it is to see each other.
And how deeply ingrained the roles we get in our family are. It's so interesting to me, the relationship between the sisters and how you don't even realize the role you've kind of been given, be it because of generational trauma or because of just being the oldest or the youngest. And how did you work with this sort of thesis when you were writing?
No, I think you said it quite beautifully. You just summarized some really important things. No, which is lovely. Thank you. No, I think that there are several things that you're touching upon. One is that in life as well as in art, we are given roles, and they can. Isn't it strange how we? I think everyone has the experience of coming home for Christmas or something, and suddenly why am I this childish character again that I used to be? I'm not this person anymore. I'm an adult. And suddenly when you hang out with your family, you become a specific character. It can have a loving, beautiful side to it, but it can also be complicated for many people. So that's one aspect of it. The sibling order that you just touched on, I find fascinating. What is it to be the first or the second, sometimes third or even more, depending on how many children there is in the family? What role is that? How do you dominate each other? How do you liberate each other? What happens with siblings? And there are infinite possibilities of this. And I'm not trying to say that these things are fixed, but to be the oldest and to be the youngest, like these two sisters in the film, it certainly plays into your identity on a fundamental level, I'm sure.
It's so interesting too, because I was thinking when I was preparing that I have a very romantic relationship to movies about houses, be it the Royal Tenenbaums, yours. I realized
I'm someone that moved a lot. My family moved from different states, different countries. Everyone is from a different country in my family. And I kind of grew up thinking that if we only would have had that Christmas tradition in the same place all the generations, everything would have been so simple. And it's not, right? So all these things in a family are different. But long story short, to say that the house is such a character in your film.
It is. You're absolutely right. And I have a double experience. I identify with you. We also moved a lot around. Both my parents had me very young, and they were both creative people and didn't make a lot of money. So we moved around a lot in flats and lived in kind of shared flats with another family. At some point, which was fun because we were many kids, and so I have like a romantic.
It has its
feeling.
benefits.
Yeah, it has its advantages. But I also know that my grandparents always had a constancy of a place they lived. And that house was built by my great-great-grandfather around turn of the century. And that house, my mother ended up living in that house for a while after I moved out. Me and my siblings moved out. And that house was sold during the writing process of this film. And I realized that was the only constancy almost, was my grandpa. So I have that experience as well as being someone who feels a bit rootless, without roots in a way, or roots are more about connection to people and the people of my family than the place. But I also have this sense that the chapters of my life always had this fundamental basis of my grandparents' house and the garden there. And that disappearing out of the family, no one can afford to own it alone. It's a big house, and economy and culture changes, and suddenly we can't afford it. So I have both. And I think that in a film, though, I wanted to approach it almost like in my dreams. I don't know how about you, but in my dreams, there are sometimes places that occur almost like the staging of my dreams and in my memories as well. There are these places that reoccur. Sometimes abstractly in a dream, but you could say, for example, I dreamt that I was in my grandparents' living room, but it was a different house. But you still have a sense of some connectedness to a constant place, right? So in cinema, we play with that aspect of space all the time. The reoccurrence of some of the rooms, for example, in the house, through the times and years of the past and the present story in this film.
And the energies kind of that are in them. And
exactly. One of the things that's the hardest to articulate intellectually, but that is the most deeply experienced when watching movies, is connected to the spatial treatment, I would call it. How spaces occur in cinema and how you can use it in a narrative in a way which is almost unconscious.
I know that house, the beautiful house, is owned by a rock star in Oslo. And just quickly before we move on, he hasn't done the whole white.
No. So the house is actually pretty sweetly, beautifully bohemian.
Good.
Intact.
I'm happy to
But
hear
I'll
that.
tell you a quick story, and you can always cut it out. But it was interesting because to manage all this time lapse, because there are some montage sequences where we go back in the house's history, back to the early 1900s and move forward to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, 60s, and so on. We had to build a replica of the house in a studio, huge replica. It cost a lot of money. And we refurbished it time and time again while going in and out of the studio and the real house, switching between to be able to show, let's say, the 1930s with perfect wallpaper. And the production designer, Jørgen Stange Larsen, and his team did a wonderful job. And at some point we invited the real family who had lived through generations in this real house we're filming in. We took them to the studio when the studio was dressed perfectly as the mid-30s. And they were so moved. It's like a time machine. They were suddenly, in their house, their living room. And we had digital screens outside, VP screens, where we had created replications of Oslo in the 30s that was screening outside the window with cars driving by and people walking the street. They were in shock. They were in awe.
Yeah.
So suddenly I felt so privileged to play with this machine of making movies and being allowed to create different time spaces that we could almost experience there and then.
There's something so interesting about Nora because she could be almost a continuation of Julie from Worst Person in the World. That it's like almost you're making a trilogy of this woman with the wonderful Renate. And so I'm wondering now when she has kind of this key to the relationship with her father, do you think you'll be continuing on?
I would love to at some point. I don't have a specific plan about what I'm doing next, but I know I love to work with Renate. She's one of the best actors in the world, I think.
She is. My friends are tired of me calling her the Meryl Streep of our time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think Anders Danielsen Lee has said exactly the same thing, actually. Yeah.
There's something about her translucent skin and how she can sort of emote the way she can.
Wow, that's a big compliment. I'll tell her someone else said it also.
Oh, good,
Anders.
not just him.
No, but I think people are feeling that. No, but I will say this. There is a key difference between Julie in The Worst Person in the World and Nora in Sentimental Value, her characters. Julie doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. She's quite naive and lost and tries different professions. The only thing that Nora knows in her life that she wants is to be an actor.
Yeah,
it's the only constancy. Everything else is chaos. And she's, and I think many of us who have been very driven by what we do and felt that we didn't choose it. Like, for example, I didn't choose to become a filmmaker. That sounds pretentious, but it's true. I'm sorry. That's what I filmed my whole life. And at some point I realized I had to really try to be good at this because it's the only thing I know how to do, really. I wasn't amazing at school. I didn't feel that I could choose everything. This is what I love to do. And I think Nora and Renate also has acted since she was a child. So we share that. Neither of us is Nora, or we're not Nora as a character, but we understand that how that drive can be kind of a salvation, but we can in our lives, but it can also turn out that we, during periods of our life, as underdeveloped life outside of that profession because it's been kind of an avoiding mechanism and the dangers of that. I think we're at an age now, we've lived through various phases in our lives. We know that danger exists.
You have some fun in the movie with the whole press circus and
Netflix
and junkets.
Yeah.
What is the most weirdest press junket question you've ever gotten?
I think the constant insinuations of trying to tie down specific biographical things, even though I invited because I make personal films.
You do.
But they're not one-to-one. You know, I'm not this or that character, or Stellan or Renate is exactly like this or that in their real life. The irony is that it functions in the way that it's exactly the fictionalization of the character that liberates us to get personal, because we're shielded by the fact that we are pretending. So you can let something occur that's out of control and real in your own life, in writing or in performance, because you're also protected by the fiction. It's a paradox. Mm-hmm. So sometimes that
people
kind of question. Well, the thing is, okay. So let's say you have an interview and you have only 4 minutes, and it's quick and it's on television, and you see that it's an intelligent. Yeah, I know. And there's an intelligent journalist who asks you a smart question, and you have to answer quickly. And then they start asking you about the biographical things, and I could talk about it for an hour because it's so incredibly complex for me how that works. I still can't figure it out, and you have to say something quick and simple. That's difficult.
Yeah, that's horrible. The machinery of the movies, these huge two, particularly the two last ones you've made. Many filmmakers from small countries, work internationally. You did a movie, Louder Than Bombs, and you're kind of back in Norway. What did you learn from this experience and sort of staying home and having global success?
I'm very grateful. I mean, I feel that Louder Than Bombs was still done exactly like I've done all my other films, but we shot it in New York. Mm-hmm. That was the difference. And the team was maybe a bit bigger, but most of the people on the camera were the same people I've always worked with. And the wonderful Jakob Ira, the cinematographer, was there. And I don't know, I'm kind of living that aspect of my dream, which is that I'm allowed to work locally with culture and characters that I feel that I can master and understand, and that those films travel. That's my dream, like being in a band, that is indie band, and suddenly your records are being listened to.
And Norway is allowing that. I mean, The Guardian just this weekend had an article about that. It's really the golden age of what Norway is, the film industry in Norway is and television is doing at the moment.
Yeah, no, I feel very blessed that I'm a part of a generation that were supported, but I don't feel that that support it's diminishing, actually. It's not so strong anymore, and I think that we are bearing the fruits of something that was planted 20 years ago by people in the Social Democratic Party who had a cultural minister at the time that cared about movies. We haven't really had that since, including the present government. That is the same party. It's the Socialdemokraterna, led by the party in Norway, Social Democratic Party. They don't care much about culture at the moment. They're not really investing in increasing the support, even though inflation has gone up tremendously. So I'm feeling that I'm in a very paradoxical situation right now. We're being celebrated around the world, yet I feel that the back country, as we say in Norwegian, like the support at home, not the Film Institute, they're doing their best, but they're not getting funded enough.
Yeah, there's not enough support.
No,
for
and then
culture.
some of the Guardians writing that it's great, and I'm like, ugh, it's complicated.
One of the things I think is wonderful in the movie is kind of the nods to the down-to-earth Scandinavian. I mean, Gustav Borg is this huge figure, but I love how he shows the Hollywood actors around in the wonderful rag socks.
Yeah, exactly. You noticed.
And
yeah.
also how he comes to his daughter Nora with his script that is going to change their relationship in a plastic bag, when a Rema 1000 or whatever you have in Norway.
It's actually from Systembolaget. Exactly. Yeah, it's very Gustav.
How did you form Gustav? How did you think of him? And from that generation of not being as emotionally assertive as our generation is, and still that Norwegian.
Yeah, I think it's almost beyond also the national idea that I wanted this doubleness. I wanted, on one hand, to show the pain and complications, both for the people around him and himself, of being incapable of these more intimate emotional connections that he's hindered from. And that's imprisoning him in a difficult situation, because he's longing for connection. He just doesn't know how. He doesn't have the language. On the other hand, I also want to defend a bit the kind of punk rock, no bullshit attitude of, I mean, I grew up in a time, I'm that old now, that I grew up in the 80s and 90s where I lived in London and we lived in squats almost, and we didn't have money and things were dirty, and it was like, I've seen that life where things weren't so fancy, and where artists felt like outsiders. Many, I didn't go into movies to feel that I would become very rich. It was risky as hell, but I thought I know how to make food cheap, and I can always live with more people in the flat. And you try to find these strategies, and I think Gustav Borg, to make it work, to survive, and and I think Gustav Borg has a bit of that old punk. Fuck it. It's we love the glamour and the beauty of the cinematic life, but at the end of the day, it's all about art and authenticity and just doing something that feels authentic to your expressive needs.
So you have the rag socks too when you're driving?
I'm afraid I do.
Oh,
Yeah, I do, because it's cold on the floor in Scandinavia. There we are.
Yeah, we are. Finally, you're continuing on this incredible journey that you're doing. I mean, I guess you're going to New York. You're going.
We're very fortunate to screen there. Yeah.
And you have this family now, the Sentimental Value. And we were talking about roles before they get. What roles do you guys have? Are you the ones who is Stellan the diplomat, and you're the one who let's take a beer afterwards, and Renate
I can try to
forgot
explain that.
her
No, I think
luggage.
I think I'm still, I guess, in this completely fake, but I'm doing my best being the kind of, I don't know, the captain of the ship and trying to support everyone. That's my role, because they're wonderful, and not that they need my support to be wonderful, but I'm trying my best to keep the team together. And it seems like everyone are really good friends now, so it's kind of fun. So my role is to try to anchor things thematically when we talk about the movie, but Renate is ridiculously funny. Inga always grounds us. Elle has this incredible experience of an actor that would be 20 years older than her, yet she's still very young. She's acted her whole life. So her knowledge is so vast. And Stellan always...
she also has a sister that
Absolutely.
Very
yeah, it's beautiful. She knows that as well. And she's brought so much to this film. And then we have Stellan at the end of the day, who brings a bit of ironic acidity and humor to the whole thing. And we love him,
Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again in another glamorous place.
I hope so. I hope the journey continues. We're having real fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Joachim Trier. The film will premiere in Stockholm on September 26th, in the US in November, and will keep rolling out. Don't miss it. And thank you so much for listening. Pop Culture Confidential is part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.